What did Cormac McCarthy think of Blood Meridian? And today we are going to analyze 4 different quotes McCarthy made about maybe his best novel. And 2 of those quotes are from an unreleased interview that McCarthy gave that you can only find here on Right Conscious. And there is a myth that surrounds McCarthy's persona that he was a reclusive author who didn't like to talk about his books or his writing process with anyone. And that is a lie, because in actuality, he didn't like to talk about books and writing with people like you or with people like me. And if you were at the Santa Fe Institute anywhere from 1998 to 2022, he would gladly discuss Judge Holden with you. Or if the road was a nuclear bomb or a meteor, all these different things. And that's one of the purposes of this channel, is to show you guys the deep personality and philosophy of Cormac McCarthy outside of his novels. And if you guys don't already know, Right Conscious is the headquarters of everything related to Cormac McCarthy here on YouTube. I already have 170 videos on McCarthy's books, his life, and his philosophy in the playlist down below, and I would love to see you in the next one. But enough for me. Let us first hear a quote from the unreleased interview where McCarthy is talking about the transition from writing Blood Meridian to doing All the Pretty Horses. And the interviewer Woodward starts, quote, "As if so much was exorcised with Blood Meridian and you didn't want to repeat the same kind of intense barrage." And McCarthy replies, "Yeah, no, some things you can't. I think that's probably what happened to Melville, right? I don't think he was really that serious about writing. I mean, he wrote those South serial master when he was fairly young. And if someone knows what he's talking about, please let me know down in the comments below. That's why I put the question mark. And so right here, we add to the puzzle, of the tapestry I've been creating here about why McCarthy decided to move away from the epic and violent approach he took in Blood Meridian and even in Suttree in terms of his literary language. And in previous videos, we discussed that he did it for money and to reach a wider audience, and to sit down for around a decade and write something like Blood Meridian is, first of all, really hard work. And for anyone out there who's undergone a creative project before, it does change who you are. Writing a novel, releasing an album, something of that nature is an endurance exercise, and you have to live with those characters and with all of that as you were walking out in your everyday life. And I would assume it's much easier and more pleasant to be contemplating John Grady Cole or Billy Parham or even Anton Chigurh than thinking about the Glanton gang and going to all the sites on horseback or in his car where all these people were murdered and raped. It isn't a psychologically good place to be. And when I look at people who are into horror films or just really into McCarthy for the violence, they kind of give me the ick. If you center your life around that and it's your thing, just like if romance or Christianity or New Age spirituality is kind of the one thing that you care about and everything is polarized around that, it can become a lot. And McCarthy was a divergent individual who had so many wide-ranging interests, even outside of writing and academia, fixing cars. He was a part of a hound dog association. He had a child later in life. He didn't really have time. He didn't really have the personality to sit and singularly focus on being the Blood Meridian guy. And McCarthy also gives us a clue here about Melville, that Melville, after Moby Dick and some of the, more tumultuous aspects of his life, started writing, less intense stuff. And I think that's important for people to realize that, first of all, writing something that's less serious, like All the Pretty Horses, could be better. I think The Crossing is Cormac McCarthy's best work. But there most likely only be a small window where you are going to peak as an author. And for most authors, it happens in their late 30s to their early 50s, where they really push out some of their best works. And there are outliers, trust me, I know. But looking at your life and where you are heading, that's probably where it is going to land. Because if you start writing at 18 to 25 years old, by the time you hit your 40s, you've trained and been in the dojo for 20 years. Your kids have probably grown up, so it's not as problematic. Your career is in order, or you've become a full-time writer. And so you can really focus for that decade with a sense of youthfulness, within you on some of these major projects. But after that, You should have hopefully achieved some success. McCarthy in 1981 got the MacArthur Fellowship and in today's money became a millionaire. Even though he was selling no books, 1,800 copies for Blood Meridian, he got this big infusion of cash. And with the way he was living, that was enough for him to live for a lifetime. And it's like a lot of boxers and UFC fighters. When you get to sleep in the silk sheets, it's really hard to wake up in the morning and still have that dog within you. And so it seems like Blood Meridian did take a psychological toll on McCarthy. And so moving on to another quote, and this quote is public that McCarthy made. He says that, quote, "There's not a lot of good guys in Blood Meridian, whereas good guys is what the road is about. That's the subject at hand." And this is an interesting quote because McCarthy in Blood Meridian really does transcend all the rules of writing. There is no positive contrast. There is no positive arc going on. There is no real main character. The kid slips in and out of the narrative. Sometimes he disappears for 10, 20 pages. Who is the narrator of Blood Meridian? Who is the god that this narrator that we exactly don't know who it is refers to in Blood Meridian? Where is the interiority in Blood Meridian? Where is the plot other than that there are a bunch of scalp hunters wandering around trying to make money, then eventually fleeing their initial escapade and downfall in Chihuahua City? Where's the romance? When you are good at writing, there are so many different things that you can transcend and do it in a way that doesn't feel gimmicky. When you look at a horror movie or some movies, sometimes there are no good characters, but that's made the central focus of kind of the piece. But in Blood Meridian, it just is what it is. We're just thrown into this epic novel and we're just with these guys who are super smelly. And speaking of smell, that transitions us into the third quote of the day, which is not available to the public right now, we'll start with McCarthy. Have made their lives better. And everybody bitches and moans about how, at the same time, all the things we are preoccupied with are somehow rather midlife poor. Well, that is one of the great things about Blood Meridian, is that you can just smell these guys as they're writing from one place to the other. And there are going to be some typos in here, you guys, because this is coming from an audio transcription of the lowest quality audio that you could imagine. That isn't spelled out, but you can. The rankness that they must have. Indians must have been able to smell these guys for 200 miles. Continuing, so that when you were saying that life might have been simpler, like there was also, but there was also that side of life. Yeah. No, I hear you. And then McCarthy replies, romantic fantasies about how life works. And I think he's really talking about us right now, that we all want to go back and be a part of Blood Meridian. And that's what I really feel the appeal of Blood Meridian is. Like, let's be honest here. Let's get down to it here on Right Conscious. When you are reading Blood Meridian, you have that feeling that you want to be a part of it. That's why we love the Wild West. There are no rules. You can kill people. You can take over towns. There is a sense of ignorance and shock because there are native peoples that have never witnessed you before, but you are in this colonial time in the 19th century where we've progressed. We've had Nietzsche, we've had Kant, we've had Spinoza, we've had the Roman Empire and the British Empire, and you can act how you want for the last time in history. And if you look back, they knew it. They knew that this was the last frontier. We will never be able to do that again unless we hit like a road type dystopian scenario. But all these people who have these romantic fantasies, including myself, when push comes to shove, we are a bunch of pansies. We'd be the first ones out. We'd be the first ones killed. So many random people went down from disease. If you remember the start of Blood Meridian, like the kid makes it through because obviously he's a character in the novel, but you could just get taken out by a random tribe or enslaved or die from a disease, and that's the end of your story. And that's how it ended up for a lot of different people. And we have many romantic notions even about the 60s and 70s and 80s, life before social media and all the stuff. But if you go back and see how people used to live, I don't know if I want to be back there. If you can get your life in control and stop being such a loser that you're addicted to technology and like don't spend enough time with your wife or out in nature, then it's a you problem. My kids aren't going to be addicted to social media because they're not going to have a phone. I'm not going to be a dumb parent and throw them in front of the tablet because we're not going to have a tablet. There's not going to be a screen in the house. It's crazy. There's going to be a camera and a laptop. We'll all be doing this in a different room that would be shut down every single day. Easiest way not to eat junk food is don't have junk food in your pantry. Anyway, we have so many romantic notions, and McCarthy, who once again did a ton of research on Blood Meridian, he understood what it was really like out there. He went on horseback and looked around out in the American Southwest. And I live here, it was 108 degrees today. I can't imagine being out there riding a horse, living in a mud hut, doing anything like that. So moving on to our next quote. Speaking of the Blood Meridian movie, quote, "That's all crap. The fact that it's a bleak and bloody story has nothing to do with whether or not you can put it on the screen. That's not the issue. The issue is that it would be very difficult to do and would require someone with a bountiful imagination and a lot of balls. But the payoff could be extraordinary." And unfortunately, John Hillcoat, the screenwriter, even Cormac McCarthy as a screenwriter, I don't think they have the potential to turn Blood Meridian into what it needs to be turned into. And it would take a Francis Ford Coppola. It would take an Alejandro Jodorowsky, a Kubrick, one of these epic directors, even someone alive right now with a big budget and big balls to be able to turn it into a 3-hour movie. Obviously, an HBO show is the answer and would make it easier, or even an anime or something like that. But I think it's still possible in the 3-hour realm. And as McCarthy says, it's all crap. There have been harder books than Blood Meridian adapted into a film, and they've been successful. And we're luckily living in a time, even with PC culture and all this stuff, where you can show rape and crazy stuff in movies, Happens all the time in 2024. So these are 4 quick quotes from McCarthy on Blood Meridian, and I'm going to follow this up. So these are public quotes, even though 2 weren't really public. They were in an interview. In the next video I'm going to bring out everything that I got from reading all the different drafts of Blood Meridian at the archive. I got a lot of his different notes where he talks about Blood Meridian. And in that video, we'll discuss those because they're a lot more meta. They're like, I need to rewrite this section, and this guy symbolizes Jesus, or stuff like that. And speaking of an inadaptable movie, David Lynch's Dune in 1984, which I actually kind of liked, had a scene when Paul takes the water of life and he says, "Father, the sleeper has awakened." And in the Blood Meridian archive or drafts, I think it was like the 2nd or 3rd draft, he writes that the judge must awaken the sleepers. He wasn't talking about, a bunch of sleeping men at a campfire. And I would like to ask you right now, and I'm going to make a video on this soon, who are those sleepers?